Good evening. This is the Board of Education meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Act was provided by written notice on January 3rd, 2019 to the Courier News, the Echo Sentinel, the Star Ledger, Tappan to Warren, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Greenbrook, Long Hill, and Warren. Could we have a roll call, Mr. Stice?
Mr. President, before we take the roll call, would you mind if I swore in the new board members?
Please do.
Okay, so can I have Janine and Jordana out front? We don't have any media here tonight, so anybody wants to take pictures?
No media?
I'll take a picture, but I can't stand
I'm
it.
gonna go
No,
alphabetical
Susan,
order, so
Susan, because
Yes.
Brenda and Al, yes, if you guys don't mind, that would be great, thank you.
So I'm gonna do you first. So, you raise your right hand. Just read that statement there.
I, Janine Potter, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. Second. I, Janine Potter, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me.
Probably, that's probably right when it went up.
I, Jordana Bond, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the United States of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state, under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Jordana Bond, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Welcome, Janine and Jordana.
Thank you.
Appreciate you joining us. It's nice for us to be a 10-member board again. Mr. Stice, can we have a roll call now, please?
Yes, Ms. Barone?
Here.
Mr. Fahey?
Here.
Mr. Hayek? Mr. Hunsinger?
Here.
Mr. Morrison?
Here.
Mrs. Ober?
Here.
Ms. Potter?
Here.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Here.
Ms. Raban?
Here.
And Mr. Family.
Yes. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will now entertain a motion in accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Be it hereby resolved that the board move into executive session to discuss confidential personnel and legal matters, CSA contract, and a WHREA negotiations update, after which action will be taken. It is expected that the matters discussed in executive session will be made public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Thank you, Barry.
Second.
Thank you, Bob. All in favor? Aye. We'll be back at 7:30. First, a brief announcement to the staff members are here. We're happy and glad that you're here. I also want to let you know that the board is going to agree to the guides proposed by the teachers in June as part, to be incorporated into the MOA. And we'll go from there, and hopefully you'll ratify the contract, and then hopefully we'll ratify the contract. Now we'll have the superintendent's comments.
I don't have anything that'll make you respond nearly like that, but, so we don't have our student reps yet. We should have those for our next meeting, and they'll generally be the ones giving the co-curricular and athletics update. Believe it or not, our fall seasons are actually coming to a close, which is hard to believe. Cross country, our senior Laura Bayans took first place in the women's race at the Bernie McGee Invitational. Football is 4-2, and our last week's win over Elizabeth was a first for the team in their competitive history with Elizabeth. So they're doing really, really well. They're 4-2, and they're going to be recognizing the seniors this Friday, as well as the cheerleaders and marching band. So we have a home game this Friday. Gymnastics is competing at the Skyline Conference Championships this Friday at Hunterdon Central. Girls soccer has advanced to the Somerset County quarterfinals. That will be this weekend. And our marching band has been doing phenomenally well. They have taken 3 first-place finishes the past 3 weekends. On Saturday, September 28th, they kicked off the competition season with the first-place win in Roxbury. On Saturday, October 5th, they competed against 11 bands in competition at the Yamaha Cup, which is hosted by U.S. Bands at MetLife Stadium. And they came in first, also winning for Best Percussion and Best Overall Effect. And just this past weekend, they took first place as well as first in overall effect, music and percussion in Somerville. So they're having a really good season. And the past 2 days, I want to thank all of you who participated and presented during our 2-day PD session. It was a really productive couple of days. And I really have to commend Beth Scheiderman for the organization, especially yesterday where we have the other districts participating. And Ms. Fallon worked closely with her on planning these couple of days. And I hope that you guys found them worthwhile. I visited a couple of sessions today, including one on equity, one on poetry writing. But there was really a lot of great stuff going on throughout the building. And a lot of it was being facilitated by our own staff members. So I really appreciate that, and I encourage you guys to continue volunteering to do that, because the feedback that we get is that your colleagues actually enjoy learning from you the most, much more than our outside presenters. So thank you very much for that, and that is all I have.
And I just want to let everybody know that Dr. Jewett last week hosted a meeting here, the county superintendents and board presidents who were invited, and it was a meeting where we were brought together specifically to discuss the possibility of changing start times at the high school. There was a presentation by Dr. Bert Mandelbaum, a pediatrician, and board members, I would tell you, his presentation is going to be given again at the November joint school boards meeting with Mercer and Somerset counties. It was an excellent presentation. There's really an awful lot of not only very good research, but very research that doesn't seem to be contradicted by much, if any, research out there on the advantages of starting high school later and the physiological reasons why teenagers and students who've gone through puberty have such difficulty functioning in a learning environment early in the morning. We were especially pleased that in addition to a number of other districts that have done this, one of our 4 sending districts, the K-8 district, was here, both their superintendent Matt Mingle and their board president David Breezy, and they also saw the sense of making such a switch, which would, in our case, involve basically flipping the youngest kids with the high school kids in terms of start time. Going back 10 years ago when I first served on this board, we originally looked at the possibility, but then we were looking at just doing it at Watchung Hills, and it would have, even back then, 10 years ago, cost us an extra $300,000 to $400,000 in transportation costs, which made it just a no-go. But if we're able to do something with the sending districts where we can flip, you can control a lot of those, and the costs of transportation will not go up nearly that much. So, yeah, and I did just see that California just mandated it just earlier this week, but let me turn it back over to the superintendent.
So I do want to thank Peter for attending, and we talked about a lot in this conversation because we looked at all of the different implications. And so one of the things I want to mention, because I'm sure you're all thinking, okay, I have children that I pick up that I need to get here. So one of the things we actually were talking about, for example, the recommended start time is 8:30. That's physiologically where they say students get the best benefit based on their circadian rhythms and when they're going to sleep. But even starting at 8 o'clock as opposed to 7:30 still has tremendous benefits. So we were talking about, okay, how can we have the most minimal impact on, you know, we want to have the impact on the students, but we obviously, it's going to impact the adults as well. So we talked about minimally impacting the teacher schedule so here we could look at some, if this were to come to pass, there's a lot of work before something like this could be done. But your teacher hours would end up being essentially the same if we flipped the after-school time with the before-school time. So that students, instead of staying after school for extra help, would come in, you know, 7:30 to 8, and then so the school day would go from, right now it goes from 7:30 to 2:15, so it would go from 8 to 2:45, so teacher hours would be 7:35 to 2:45, or 7:30 to 2:45 instead of 7:25 to 2:40. So just so that everyone, you know, you're can breathe a little bit and not thinking this is going to disrupt, you know, my entire life and what we're able to do. So those are the types of things we talked about. And obviously we want to get athletic directors together to talk about those implications. But, you know, there really are a lot of tremendous benefits to it. So that's what we're starting the conversations. But there's a lot that goes into this, and obviously a lot of considerations. But I just want you to know that we're very aware of those different types of considerations. So that's something that we talked about. And, you know, we'll be continuing the conversations. And if anyone has any other creative thoughts or ideas that they would like to share, and I'm being completely serious about this because there's so many different things to think about, or if you read about it being done anywhere else, or if you have any experience in your own districts, please share that with me because it will be very helpful.
Okay, I don't have further comments. Mr. Stiles?
I have no comments, Mr. President.
Okay, Bob has
Yes, Bob, I'm sorry.
So I wanted to pick up on one of the comments that Dr. Jewett made about the success of the Marching Warriors, because it's not as simple as they just won the 3 competitions that they've attended. The MetLife Stadium Yamaha Cup, they defeated 11 other bands in their particular group, which was Group 4, but they also had the highest score of all of the bands in the A class. And the same thing happened this past weekend in Somerville, where they were the highest scoring band, not only in their group, but for the entire A class that they're competing in. And I think it's a tremendous testament to the work of the arts faculty, the volunteer staff, and certainly they're being led by Mr. McCullen, who is here tonight. So just want to put a tip of the hat there to Mr. McCullen. And related to that, there was this a post yesterday that was on the TAP by a parent. I think her name's Gina Bellotti, if I'm not mistaken. I would encourage every board member to read that article that she wrote because it really talks in great detail about the impact that these programs have on our students, and not just the scores and everything else, but what it does for them in making the school a smaller place, developing a sense of community, the social, emotional well-being of our students. And I think it's a very powerful testament to the impact that this particular program has, but I think it's representative of the impact that many of our programs have.
Thank you, Bob. Okay. We are now ready for our update on progress. I think that's the signal.
We're going to talk about a lot of what you
I
guys
think
are
that's
doing.
the signal that we will take a 2-minute break if you guys want to leave.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm glad you finally got seats. So this has become a nice tradition now that we get to do this twice a year. And we have a very robust presentation tonight, but I think you know what to expect by now in terms of the flow of it. We will be talking a little bit about, so I'll just review our strategic plan very briefly, as I think everyone knows it fairly well by now. And then we'll go through some of the indicators of progress that we look at each year to see how we're doing. And then each department is actually going to share their goals that they've established for this year aligned to the strategic plan, as well as some highlights from last year, just as a little refresher. So we have our vision and our strategic plan goals. And I'm really, really pleased to see the progress that we've made on all three of these goals. And I know we've said it before, and I know Georgiana said it when, when she was speaking to the board last time, that I don't see our next strategic plan being revolutionarily different from, being such a stark contrast to what we have right now, because these goals were crafted with a lot of input from the community, and you all were a part of working on it, as well as the staff, and they're really very thoughtful and meaningful goals around social emotional wellness, planning for post-secondary learning, and integrating creative, integrating creative, innovative, and interdisciplinary learning. That one's still a mouthful. And you'll see that the department goals really bring those to life, and we'll talk a little bit about the progress that we've made. I know, each May we speak to that in great detail. But it's also really nice that people have been asking me when we're going to be working on the next strategic plan and can they be a part of it, because now they actually have an idea of what one is. When we first went through the process last time, I think many of us included, many of the staff members weren't quite sure what this would mean. And they also thought, okay, yeah, we'll talk about this for a year and then we'll move on to something new. But thanks to the support of the board, we've had tremendous fidelity to this plan, and you have allocated resources towards the support of the plan, and that's why we've been able to make such progress. So I'm really pleased to have everyone here tonight to talk about this. So I'm going to invite up Ms. Fallon and Mr. DeLessio to give a little bit of an overview of our student performance data.
And just before you two guys get started, I do want to say that, as Dr. Jewett said, when we first went into this process of coming up with a strategic plan, a lot of people didn't really know where we were going, including board members. And I want to give Bob Morrison some credit for being one of the people really pushing all of us board members to adopt a strategic plan so we would have the vision to go forward. And I think it's helped, and I think where we've gotten to is a much better place for having put in the effort to do that. A lot of you were parts of that as well. And the second thing I want to say is, I know Dr. Jewett said this, but on behalf of the board members, we really look forward to these two meetings every year. These are, to us, the most informative about what's going on in the school, and especially those of us who don't have kids here right now. It's tremendously valuable and helps us going forward, figuring ways to support you and the teachers. So have at us.
Thank you, Peter. So I'm going to start the presentation tonight looking at our National Merit Scholars. So just to give you a background on National Merit, tomorrow is PSAT Day, so keep that in mind this evening when we're here. So it's a big day for our students. PSAT is the pre-SAT taken by 10th and 11th graders. 11th grade students can achieve National Merit Scholarship recognition or being commended for that, or semifinalists or finalists based on how they score on the test. It is different scores state to state. New Jersey is one of the highest, or the highest probably state each year to achieve a National Merit Scholar. And for 2020, we had 30 recognized students, 26 commended, 4 semifinalists, and we don't know how many finalists just yet. That number hasn't been released. So that's for the senior class who took their PSATs as juniors last year. Also, we have a slide on our 3-year SAT trend. Usually this is a 5-year trend, but as you know, or may have heard from our past presentations, that the SAT did change its makeup, or the way the test was made up a few years ago, and the data was a little bit clunky in the sense that we had to look at old SAT versus the redesigned test. So we have 3 years of clean data on this for our students in terms of the redesigned test. So the class of 2019's scores are there way above the New Jersey average again. And again, it's relative each year to a different class that's graduating, but we will always seem to be way above the New Jersey average. So this is our 3-year trend. The ACT is a different kind of test than the SAT. This test has not changed for a while, and this is the 5-year ACT analysis. It's a composite score. The test is made up of reading, a grammar section, or what we call a writing section, mathematics and science. So a composite score is the total score of all 4 sections, averaged out, with the highest being a 36. And again, we do very well relative to the state, kept a little bit of a steady climb, but the numbers are pretty much the same each year for the ACT, and our students, again, do well on that. I'm going to turn the next slides over to Mr. Twizzler and Mr. Aquavia, where they're going to talk about the NJSLA test, which was formerly known as PARC.
I'd like to draw your attention to the Algebra 1, similar to the SAT. Algebra 1, this is the first year of the NJ SLAW as opposed to the NJ PARC. Interestingly enough, our Algebra 2 and Geometry students did quite well this year, but I'd also draw your attention to the fact that this was the first year where the state said that juniors did not have to test. So quite a few of our Algebra 2 students did not test this past year, because they were juniors and they did not have to, whereas opposed to all of our freshmen tested in one of these 3 tests. Looking at the numbers, we're pretty consistent with the number of students that we had that earned that met expectations or exceeded expectations. We actually closed the gap in Algebra 1 between how our students performed in the state, and Geometry and Algebra 2 held pretty steady as to where they were. The Algebra 2 number did increase quite a bit by the fact that the juniors did not test that had already exempted out of some other cause. Mr. Clay, we can talk a little bit about English.
Testing in English, I think, is in many ways is far more straightforward than in mathematics. There's one assessment for all 9th graders, regardless of the level of 9th grade course that students take, one assessment for 10th graders, et cetera. And we feel that our NJSLA scores, particularly in 9th and 10th grade, suggest to us that our curriculum is well aligned with rigorous state standards. We're pleased with our performance when compared with grade level peers across the state. We feel that performance is strong, particularly as we see it here in 9th and 10th grade. And think these results, among others, are meaningful for us to learn from. The 11th grade scores, again, were based on a very small group of students. Not all students were required to take that assessment. So we continue to work on strategies to support the special education learners in English language arts. We certainly continue to review results to guide our instruction. But we also recognize that strong performance in ELA is certainly based on students' performance in English classes, but not limited to performance in English classes. Students are learning strong critical reading, writing, and thinking skills across the content areas. And we appreciate other content area contributions in these areas. We continue to align instruction with the standards. We think that's very important for us to do. Our analysis helps us to know where to target our efforts. So for instance, our performance slipped slightly with AP Language and Composition. That is reflected, like we fell just below that 4 average score. That's reflected also in the national data for the AP Language and Composition exam. So we use that to guide instructional changes and also to guide choices about professional development. We do the same with our AP Literature course. We continue to use resources to help us differentiate, digital resources to help us differentiate in the classroom and to guide our assessment of student learning.
Last year, we did a lot in the math classes, particularly in the algebra classes, to integrate more calculator usage. We found that on the test, many students were not comfortable with the graphing calculator, which is virtually provided to them during the electronic testing and SLAW. So we thought it'd be a great idea to get the students more comfortable with the calculator, although our program has historically been a very non-calculator program, which has a lot of benefits to it. We decided that we wanted to integrate more calculator usage to get the students ready. This past summer, we did a lot of, even before that, at the spring of last year, we did a lot of work with the middle schools, collaborating with them, talking about their algebra program, considering where we could integrate more technology, particularly coding, into the Algebra 1 program. And it was very fruitful to have those conversations with them to find out about what they're doing down at the middle school and successes that they've had that we could then leverage, or successes that we've had that they could then leverage. As a byproduct of that, we built an entirely new Algebra 1 curriculum, focused more on problem solving to help the students better prepare for this test. In addition, even if this test ends up going away, it will better prepare students for the SAT, which has been overhauled to focus more on problem solving and less on the classical uses that it used to be. So we're really hoping that this will pay dividends, even if they end up changing the test on us again. But hopefully, at least we'll still be able to benefit from that on the SAT.
And what we have next is the AP test. And we're always working for the new board members. When Dr. Dewitt first came, she suggested to the staff that we could put more focus on student performance because we have such wonderful kids who come here. And so it became exciting to help the curriculum grow. And we've been very grateful to the board for the one-to-one because we've been able to leverage, again, extra resources for giving kids more practice for the AP. So we're very proud of our AP scores, and I'll just go quickly, through them. So to get this number of students scoring a 3 or above, and most schools will accept a 3 for the freshman course. So they then will be excused from a 101 course, which our kids take tremendous advantage of. And then you can see the individual scores. And the board members who were here last year know that we were focused on improving some of our scores that were below 4 or the scores that just made 4.0, and we're particularly proud of our European history class and our human geography because those classes are difficult, and we have a very open policy also for the new board members. We don't say if you don't have the prerequisites, you're not able to eat at the table of the feast of the AP. And the performance of our students remains steady, as Michael said, and we are also very impressed with students who have achieved scores of 4 or better in 8 AP exams. So we know that they're called the national scholars, and they're all the way to your right. And to have consistently 30 students, achieve that phenomenon is particularly impressive. And we feel that we're helping all students grow and learn as a result. Normally, Kathy Angelastro, our Director of Guidance, would be giving you these slides, but as you know, you have approved the new hire, so I'm just going to give a brief overview, and Liz is going to talk later about guidance. But one of the statistics that we were surprised about was the 2-year college for 2019, that it has dropped by 10%. Again, our students are doing extremely well in the competitive college process. Of course, we all know about the Ivy Blues scandal and Rick Singer, so we don't know what the impact/effect will be this year for our students, but we're very proud of the number of applications and the number of acceptances. And as you can see, we continue to show a lot of diversity in the schools that our students apply to. So we have, students matriculated this year at Stanford, at Duke, at Yale, but we're also as proud of our students who are going to Rutgers and who are in fact in the honors program there, and we believe they're getting a wonderful education. Maryland, Penn State, and Rutgers continue to like our kids, accept our kids, and they have wonderful experiences. And now, George Alexis used to say his favorite HR director, Beth Scheiderman.
Good evening, thank you. Whoops, I'm going to be ruining this. In addition to year-long professional learning that's accomplished at Watchung Hills through the professional learning communities, the departmental initiatives, the feedback from the observation, we do have 4 designated professional development days, which already occurred for this year, the last one finishing today, as Dr. Jewett mentioned. So that has happened in August and in October of this year, so I'll visit those 4 events first. Our 2 opening days this year focused largely on departmental and collaborative sessions. Some of them were interdepartmental and some of them within each department, and yesterday and today. Yesterday we repeated our shared day. Although we lost much of Warren Township, they had some school-based district-wide events that they were engaging in. So we were smaller this year, but still very meaningful. We hosted 36 sessions here at the high school with 206 participants. Specialized share sessions with PE, world languages, and arts still occurred with all 4 sending districts. So we did maintain some of that relationship yesterday. Today focused largely on departmental initiatives and then some specialty training, as Mary Ellen mentioned, with the equity team training. That equity team training will continue throughout the year and embedded in the PLC time, so we're very excited about being able to sustain that professional learning throughout the year. Also back in August, we had our administrator retreat this year, a little bit different as we included a service project. Patricia Tobin was able to connect us with a program where the administrators put together backpacks for children who are in foster care. So that was a meaningful education-based service project that we engaged in. The administrative team read the growth mindset book, and our presenter included that in our discussions that day, and we also revisited the strategic plan and geared up for this year with our 5th year of the strategic plan. And as always, we had a new educator orientation in August. We held 15 different sessions for the new educators over the course of the 3 days. We had 13 attendees, and they are continuing their ongoing support through our mentoring committee, which met today to check in with everyone, and things seem to be going very, very well with our new educators, so that was nice to see. And Mr. James Aquavia.
English highlights of the last school year include our work with curriculum development. Last year was the first year working with the new documented writing unit of study for grade 12. It's a unit that aligns requirements for student writing more closely with it aligns the requirements of student writing more closely with the requirements of first-year writing programs at the undergraduate level. While that is a single unit of study, we found that unit of study influenced writing instruction across the school year for grade 12 students. Toward the end of last school year, we also developed new poetry-focused units of study for grades 9 and 10 to foster students' close, attentive reading. This prepares them well to engage with other complex texts. We continue to grow our evening and summer college application essay workshops. And last year we hosted an author visit with Hillary Ryle. Hillary Ryle wrote Kids Like Us, which was our school-wide read last year. And this year we will host an author visit with Vera Hiranandani, who is the writer of The Night Diary, this year's school-wide read. We provided professional learning for several teachers through College Board-sponsored sessions, specifically to assist teachers with new course frameworks for AP Language and Composition and AP Literature and Composition. Those new frameworks also included new scoring rubrics for writing, so it was necessary that we provided that professional learning for teachers. We also provided professional learning through the Rutgers Writing Program Summer College for teachers. This was a meaningful way, I think, to support teacher learning as well. Our goals for this year are to expand upon and enhance the teaching of poetry. This is informed. This is a goal that's informed by what we're finding in students in AP literature and composition and their performance on the exam. It's also informed by what we hear from undergraduate departments of English, which tell us that through the learning poetry, that the compression of poetry helps students prepare for dealing with complex text. It's a really worthwhile goal to support close, attentive reading at all grades and levels. We're going to engage students in language study through sentence-level analysis of style. This is not the use of grammar exercises, although it does get students thinking critically about the use of punctuation and grammar stylistically. It's a very close look at language. At the sentence level, to do that sort of analysis, we also think is very important. And we want to continue to improve the quality of feedback on student writing to accelerate their growth through revision. Thank you.
Good evening. So with social studies, we have some exciting things going on this year. Last year, however, I had talked to you about some of the new technologies that we had incorporated, especially readings. We're continuing them this year. We actually, on our professional development days, had some sessions on those. I told you last year a little about Albert.io, which is a program that allows us to, it actually compiles all kinds of literacy readings and questions. It was originally designed for improving AP scores because it has tons and tons of practice questions, but they've expanded, so all levels of our students will have access to this program that will increase their reading abilities. Newsella is a very similar program in the sense that we can set articles, nonfiction, current events, biographies, and so on, to the students' particular lexile level, their reading level, and we've noticed that as we do this, their reading level does increase throughout the year as we see the improvement. We have the New York Times. We're in our third year. For some reason, they keep giving us free subscriptions, so we're taking them, and so we're able to get a lot of articles and things from that. We also were working on different types of learners, which is kind of similar to what I was just talking about reading levels, but also trying to get students who are not as vocal in class to participate more. And we've been working on some of those strategies. We looked at homework, not just to give homework, but to make it meaningful. And then the literacy strategies as well. This year, we're going to continue with literacy skills, which is why we're still working with Albert.io and Newsella and some of the other resources that we have that are digital. We're slightly moving away from textbooks and doing a lot of primary readings and so on. We found also a lot of the teachers were looking at this and assessing their students and saying, you know what, I think they don't know how to understand the text because they don't always know the words in the reading. And so we're looking at strategies to help them with vocabulary, which will hopefully help with some of the other things that you heard here with the NJ SLO, with what they're doing in English, and so on. We also, our second goal is to, I've always told you we're changing, we're not the memorization, we're not just the presidents and that kind of information that we give to the students. But every year we keep looking at integrating more and more different types of groups. So we're all inclusive. The state of New Jersey has continued to issue mandates, which just kind of reminds us that these are the certain groups that should be included. And it's not always natural. Okay, well, in world history, how do we include such and such a group? For example, New Jersey just passed the disabilities and LGBTQ. So what we're doing as a department this year is working in smaller groups, the teachers, and working to see how we can infuse all of these types of groups without making it like, oh, well, Franklin Roosevelt was in a wheelchair. We want to make it more natural, and so that it just is a seamless process. And that goes across all different kinds of groups. And then, and I'm really excited about this, so we started our civics course this year, which has become very popular. We have a great teacher teaching it. They're learning, it's in some ways, it's kind of scary because the students don't know about the 3 branches of government. They don't know the 2 major political parties. We poll them. They don't understand whether you should not vote, all of these questions. And it's like, my goodness. So we're actually working with, there's a program at Rutgers which deals with civics education, and we're working closely with them to implement civics education. And we're going to hope that that course increases. I'm not sure if it passed yet or not, but they are working. There's a lot of lobbying going on to get middle schools to mandate civics education. They're not really doing it in high schools because it's a little bit more difficult to mandate another course. But we're sort of hoping if that goes through the New Jersey legislature, that'll encourage more kids to take it when they get here, because they'll have an interest that they got from middle school, and that will continue. So we're really excited about that one, and encouraging students to learn a little bit about our political and our government system. So thank you, and now Mr. Comerford.
This is just an enter. Good evening. Last year in health and PE, we began district articulation with both programs. It was very successful. We're continuing that this year as well. We also include wellness in our health curriculum, which you know is also a district goal. We had full-day activities with staff, PTO activities and parent activities, and Flex Day. We use Flex Day as a wellness opportunity in our health curriculum throughout the year. We continue with SMART goals, where the students are learning to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based in setting their goals, and especially when they run into problematic areas, how to resolve issues. Once you've set your goal and you don't quite reach your goal, what you can do and what resources are available. We also took a look at post-secondary skills, and this one morphed a little bit during the year because the students were very interested in what they've seen their older siblings go through when all of those credit card applications come in and they ask them, sign up, sign up, sign up, and they wanted information on credit cards and interest rates and how all of that world works before they end up getting themselves in trouble. Adventure Ed, if you have not actually seen our Adventure Ed course, you really should go outside and see it. It's adjacent to the tennis courts and Border 78 in the back. We had a professional development opportunity with the company that comes in and sponsors it. And our teachers were updated as far as the requirements for the events, but really interesting to see. We have low-level events and high-level events. And if you like height and you want to try going up there, we'd be more than happy to put a harness on you and get you up there so you can take a bird's eye view of what's going on back there. And then adaptive PE. Our students were learning to lead instruction themselves by creating and implementing recreational games on their own, and then learning to reflect on that, how well they went and what they need to do to improve it. For this year, we are going to highlight mental health issues. We are required by the state of New Jersey to offer a program on suicide and suicide prevention. As part of that program, we now are required to incorporate the topics of anxiety and depression. The focus for us will be on coping strategies and prevention, and we plan to do that through authentic understanding and implementation of mindfulness activities. One of those things is our classroom affirmations that I'm sure you've heard about. They help build confidence, self-worth, and self-esteem. Our second goal is to create time management opportunities for students to address their academic, social, and extracurricular goals. Everybody is so very busy, so they have to learn how to manage their time. This can best be seen in our health curriculum. Each one is a little bit different. In 9th grade, they work on their SMART goals, and they continue to work on those throughout the year, what they're going to set in those 3 areas. 10th graders discuss responsible driving habits, and we do that through time management and teaching them how to map out a trip so they can avoid mishaps, right? Whether they be personal mishaps or legal mishaps. The 11th graders discuss stress management, which is an issue for them when they start applying to colleges and looking forward as to their next steps when they're going on to planning their careers. We do that through better organizational skills, and the 12th graders focus on career planning and what's ahead for them and how to manage specifically that downtime they're going to come across when they get to college. Our third goal is to integrate technology and support for all of our instructional goals in health and PE. We're moving towards incorporating more smartboard technology, which we have access to, throughout all the curricula that we have. Continue to experiment with video-based platforms. We're using Flipgrid for the 2nd year, and that's going to allow students to self-assess so they can enhance their form and techniques in both health and physical education. And also discovering the power of the fitness apps, that they use YouTube instructional videos and how we can help them develop proper skills and technique and track their progress. World languages. Last year, we incorporated integrated performance assessments with workshops on what they are and how they can be implemented. And it was a great success, and we just had them back again the past 2 days, and we worked with sending districts. And then today was dedicated just to us at the high school. The approach was to solidify our program across all of the languages and levels so we can compare student success in our 4 world language programs. We focus on what we can do, the can-do statements, what we can do, and build upon those. To give more in-depth use of technology like Google Suite products and online assessment, and that provides immediate feedback and analysis of improvement. And we work towards our guidance model for the English language learners and offer strategies to improve their performance as well, right, in the content areas. Our goals for this year in world languages include focus on self-assessment, focus on self-assessment strategies as a tool for their individual learning progress, help our students better understand their own skill level through self-reflection and how they can improve their skills over time by understanding where they are in the process right now. We will accomplish this by continuing our research and development of new integrated performance assessments that will highlight student and program competencies. And this way, our AP scores will continue to thrive in world languages, and we can validate our work and our students' accomplishments. And finally, we're going to incorporate activities across all languages to aid our students in becoming well-prepared global citizens. Global citizenship is a greater understanding of civic responsibilities. So through language study and acquisition, we will help them prepare, become better citizens, and understand and address the global challenges they will encounter in their lives and their personal careers. And now it's mathematics and business, Mr. Dan Twisler.
Hello again, everyone. From 2018, 2019, we saw some changes in the math and business department. Most notably, it was the articulation that I mentioned earlier, but it went beyond the Algebra 1 calibration with the middle schools, where we invited them in and I ran workshops with them so that the middle school teachers could meet the high school teachers. It also extended to the students. We had multiple different outreach programs of computer science students going to the middle school and running workshops for the middle school students to learn a little bit more about computer science and try and bolster interest in the hackathon. We had our second annual hackathon, and it had a very strong middle school presence, which we were happy about, both to get students interested in CS and also to have a community outreach to the sending districts. It has also helped us to be able to double our number of students in computer science principles this year. And last year was the first year that it was a tested subject, and this year we have doubled the number of sections from it. I think it's in part to do with things like the hackathon. We had our third annual TEDx. This year, I spent the summer learning Python because I really wanted to be able to explore data. And I was able to look at different cross-sections of the SLAW data and the AP data and placement for math courses to see whether or not we're putting students in the right classes. I was able to share out my AP analysis with all the different AP courses so they could learn a little bit about the types of students, some of the students that Ms. Falvo mentioned earlier, about different ethnicities perhaps that aren't represented in different courses, so we could look in a little bit greater detail to find out whether or not we're serving our community. Technology exploration. I can tell you that the first day of school, I saw Chromebooks open in quite a few different math classes. And in large part, that's because the first time we can now confidently say for different courses that all the students are going to have devices. Unlike English that might be grouped by freshman or sophomore or junior, the math courses are not. Our freshmen start out in 7 different math classes. So to say that all the freshmen have Chromebooks or all the freshmen and sophomores have Chromebooks, math teachers are not always confident that every single student will have a device. But now this year, now that we've got 3/4 of the students with Chromebooks, it has found its way into quite a few math classrooms. In that regard, one of the major things that we're working on this year is student engagement. Some of that is done through technology. I have a geometry class where the students are doing all their note-taking on the Chromebook. I actually bought styluses for the freshmen so that they can write on the Chromebook and actually take their math notes on the device, so that now they have an electronic copy of their notes that they can reference at different times. We have students using programs like Albert. Albert has expanded in both directions. They now have middle school content and college level content through Albert. so that regardless of where our students are at, they can use that as a means to be able to learn a little bit more about the math. I'm sorry, that's a little bit more of the technology underneath, but it's hard to do one without the other. Historically, our classes have been very heavily driven by lecture, and we're looking to use technology as a means to try and shake that up a little bit. We have a lot more teachers exploring the idea of group work. We have a lot more teachers exploring the idea of formative assessment through the use of technology, whether it's Nearpod or Pear Deck. Our teachers are exploring a lot of different things to find ways to get students to engage a little bit more with the content and find out how much of the content they know instead of waiting till the test. I'd like to introduce Mr. D'Alessio.
So some of our 2018-19 highlights are up on the screen, and you can barely see from here, I'm sorry. So I'm going back and forth. So the science department does participate in what's called the New Jersey Science League each year. We've been participating in that for as long as I've been here. We have a biology, chemistry, and physics teams, as well as some AP teams. And again, the students placed very well. 6th place in biology, chemistry, 7th place, high school physics, and 9th, and AP Physics C in 11th place. There's about anywhere between 100 to 125 schools that participate in each category. This year we also participated in the Chemistry Olympics at the NJIT in Newark. Students placed 1st and 2nd in demonstration show, 1st and 3rd in the information search, 2nd place in chemical engineering research, 2nd place in chemistry research, and overall we sent 2 teams, which is kind of unique. We had so many students, and they placed 2nd and 3rd overall of 25 teams. So we're very proud of those students. Mrs. Pirabella took them this year, or last year. We had 1 student selected Governor's School of Engineering last year, a prestigious program that through the years we've always had representation for Watch and Hill students. Last year, we implemented our junior reading, which was Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson. As you may have heard in the past, we have readings for the freshmen. They read The Martian. Sophomore year, students read The Disappearing Spoon, which is a chemistry-based book. And then the junior year reading was this, and we incorporate these in our physics classes. Last year was, again, a big technology year for the science department. As Mr. Twizzler said, 3/4 of our students now have Google Chromebooks. So last year we had professional developed from an outside consultant from Vernier Technology for all our science teachers. Vernier Technology is basically a company that provides probes for us to use via computer analysis, allows our students to collect data and analyze it in a very scientific fashion. So the entire department participated in that, and just the other day I was in a freshman class. They were using handheld Vernier devices for pH measurements of different substances. You wouldn't have seen that in years past till our professional development in this. This summer I did a 6-year analysis of the AP data and also shared that data not just with the AP teachers but the teachers in the department. Was meant for teachers to have information on how students are doing, how they're doing amongst their colleagues who teach the same course or AP course, and overall how our students are doing. I also did a statistical comparison of grades versus AP score, completed that and shared it with our teachers, basically looking to see at our guidelines and if our guidelines are working for AP placement and so forth, but also giving the teachers an idea of how students are scoring on this test related to their final grade. So our goals for this year are to integrate and expand research opportunities that are articulated across the grade levels. Today we had a great discussion about basically how to get our students to understand what a literary review is, and we came up with some really good ideas that we're going to implement for teachers in the 9th grade, and then actually push it into the 10th and the 11th grade also. So it's a nice thing to see, and I think it's going to help a lot with Mr. Quavia and the history department, Ms. Falvo, when they're writing their research papers. We're going to expand the use of student performance data for our practices and guidance through our course selection. That was really the big AP report that I did this year. And we're also going to be looking at the NJSLA data in mathematics, comparing that to how students do in their science class each year. So a lot of data analysis for the teachers to get back and give them some feedback on how our students are doing in things other than just the science class. So Mr. Bertelli will come up for arts.
Last year in the arts and the curriculum, we added the honors credit to our chorus program and our fine arts 3 program. This not only rewards the students for their hard work and creative talents, but I believe the teachers also will be able to push them to reach more beyond their potential. We have also inserted a freshman band into our band program, which all the freshmen come into one classroom. It is co-taught by 2 of the teachers, which enables the freshmen to get individual pull-out lessons with their section. So on one day, all the clarinets will come with Mr. McCullen and get some instruction. On the next day, the trumpets will go with Mr. Wyatt and get some instruction. And this, with 4 sending districts, 4 students from 4 different middle school teachers, kind of, will level out a little bit and give some of the students some opportunity to learn on an individual basis from their teacher. We also, as you know, built the Music Tech Lab, which is a phenomenal space, and the students absolutely love that classroom. The idea there was to kind of offer some music classes to the students who aren't coming into our high school as a band student or a choir student. Just one stat, our first year in the music tech room, we had 1 section, now we have 3. So it's growing at a pretty good rate, and the kids are working with authentic programs such as Pro Tools, FL Studio, to create their own music, write their own songs, and eventually publish their own tracks as well. In that classroom, we also teach guitar and keyboarding. We've also tried to expand the performance opportunities with the band in competitions like the Wind Ensemble competition in Summit High School and the Jazz Showcase in one of the Elizabeth schools. And we're always trying to collaborate across and within the arts programs. I think one of the pinnacles and great examples of that was when the band and chorus last year collaborated with the Ode to Joy, and if you were there to see that, it was phenomenal. We had alumni come and some professionals come as well, and it was a phenomenal display of what our staff members can do when they come together and work together as a team. For this year, we are trying to continue to refine our pathways in the arts to make them equitable and across all levels. So each student has the same experience to reach the advanced or AP level, taking the same time as other students. A lot of our programs are kind of mismatched. So it takes some students, like the fine arts students, longer time to reach the AP level rather than, let's say, the photo students. So we're working hard in our department meetings to try to come up with ways to kind of make that equitable for all the students. And then we're also trying to continue to create performance opportunities to showcase the talents of all our students. A couple little tidbits. We just purchased our new grand piano, which will enable us to host events such as the CJMEA Regions concert, and will also sound really fantastic in our PAC auditorium. We've also purchased 3 new instruments for our band: a new marimba, a new bassoon, and a new another new instrument that I'm off the top of my head now.
What brand was the piano?
What brand was the piano?
The piano, we settled on the Yamaha, and it is fantastic. I urge you to come down and check it out. You'll also see it in the winter concerts coming up soon.
It's very nice.
It's very nice. Mr. Stiles can attest to that.
Yes.
Do you play the piano? No.
We're also
It looks
bolstering
very
the
cool.
equipment in the video room too, to try to kind of get more of the word out of what our students are doing in the schools to on video platforms as well. Special Services, Ms. Mary Ann Sales.
Okay, so last year was our first full year with iExcel. It's a digital platform that we're using in our resource and LLD classes. It allows the teachers to personalize the work that the students gets pushed out to the students so that they can work specifically on areas that they individually need to target, rather than working their way through a set program where they have to do all the components. The teachers can determine where they're still needing to shore up some of their skills and push out activities for them in that area. We ran a very successful extended school year program this year, focusing on reading and mathematics. The students read the night diary together collectively, started working on the skills that they needed for their math courses. Every Friday, there was a community trip that was based on the lessons that were happening during the week. Special education teachers, led by Mr. Bird, put in a lot of time and did a really nice job of bringing forward a program to assure that there is no regression and recoupment, which is the focus of extended school year, but also made it fun. And you know, the kids liked coming, they enjoyed being there, they had a good time, and they were still learning in the process, which is always wonderful. And then the Child Study Team was introduced to what we call SIBS. It stands for Student Inventory Behavior. It's a digital program that we had the presenter come last year during the shared district PD day, and he spoke to child study teams from all 4 sending districts about the focus of the program. The idea is that the team can go into the classroom and observe the child without their instructional support, the instructional aides. So they'll have them set aside a little bit and watch how much interaction is there between, how many times does the teacher engage the student? How many times does the student engage the teacher? How often do the students reach out to their peers, like to get a nice objective view of the level of support that kids really need in the classroom. And then it graphs it out for us and shows us the percentage of time that they're on task and being self-directed versus needing to be redirected. You know, it's nice objective data to share with families to say, actually, 80% of the time your child asked the question before they needed to be prompted to ask the question. So it's a tool that we're starting to use this year, and we'll see how it goes. You do 6 separate observations. They're each a full class period. Every 3 minutes you take the data, and then you enter up your comments, and it'll give us a report and charting to show throughout the day where the strengths and weaknesses are and where there might need to be more support and where there might need to be less support. And then next year, we're hoping to, this school year, we're hoping to build on our transition as our new library learning center is being built, the cafe being put in. The LOD students would look to work with our food services in the development of that cafe and how, get some more transition experiences. It's always nice to work here in-house and then transfer those skills out into the community. We have a really large school-to-work program for our learning language students, and we do start the skills here, and then we take it out in the community, and then we also then transfer those skills. So like if they're learning to stock shelves at Walgreens, then they might go to TJ Maxx and do the same, different product, but the same concept. So we're teaching them to transfer those skills. And our community has been really wonderful to us. They hire our kids in the summer times, and after they graduate, they offer them employment. They've been really tremendous. And then we're going to continue with our social and emotional wellness, special services, as well as the Gen Ed will work closely with Care Plus to address the attendance concerns that we have for students related to anxiety and school resistance. Worried about getting them to come in and working with Care Plus to give them the skills and strategies that they need so that when they're here, they can feel comfortable and move throughout their day. One thing I just want to emphasize is that what Mrs. Sales presented was really what is specific to special services. Our students who are classified are in many general ed classes, and our special education teachers are integrated into the content area departments. So all of those goals that the department supervisors spoke of apply to all of our courses. from CP to AP, and those teachers are in those departments. We made that change several years ago because we really wanted more of an integrated approach, and I think that has been very successful. I am just going to speak about our school counseling department a little bit. Our interim director could not be with us tonight, Mrs. Patterson. Tomorrow is her last day, and our new interim's first day, who has been transitioning with Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Hayes will be here until Mr. Sabino is able to start on December 1st, and he'll be able to transition with Mrs. Hayes for a few days. The three of them have actually been talking. I have to say our interim director had a conversation on Sunday for several hours with our incoming permanent director, Mr. Sabino. So there's a lot of coordination going on. And I can assure you that progress has not stalled in the counseling department due to the interims. We have continued full speed ahead and actually made a tremendous amount of progress. And I met with Mrs. Patterson to actually look at goals for the school counseling department. One thing I do want to point out, those of you may recall that on our job description, we changed it from Director of Guidance to Director of School Counseling. That is actually what the certificate has been changed to. It's a more updated title for the role and for the department, because guidance is one aspect of it, but it is much bigger than that. There are a lot of components to school counseling, as you're aware, for those of you who've had students come through the school. So we are making that shift to calling it school counseling instead of guidance. And in terms of some of the highlights, these are things we've talked a lot about. Last year we did a senior survey pilot, really trying to start gathering information from our seniors and from our graduates as well, from our alumni. We've increased the number of instant decision day opportunities, collaborated with our transition coordinator to explore senior work-related experiences. Mr. Massa has been an admissions director at a number of colleges and came and did a session last year, which some of you attended. I still remember talking to Jed afterward, where he was going home to take his advice, and he went on a college that he was interested in, to the department that he was interested in, emailed a professor, because that was one of Mr. Massa's recommendations. If you want to get a feel for the school, you want to dialogue, talk to a professor, see what kind of response you get. And so a number of students told me they went home that night and did that. Continued collaboration with Care Plus. If you notice, there are definite overlaps between what Ms. Sales talked about and what are on these slides, because our counseling department and special services work very closely together, especially in supporting students. We have a very effective continuum of supports, which Ms. Scheiderman and I will actually be presenting on at school boards on Tuesday morning, because we've made a lot of progress in our district on that. And I know Mr. Fallon is on the task force for school boards on social emotional learning. And that's obviously one of I think it's the major theme this year of the school boards conference. Our student assistance counselors do a lot in the district, and many of you know of Challenge Day and have students who have participated in Challenge Day, and they have an active collaboration with the Municipal Alliance. We had a number of evening programs last year for parents and students. We had the vaping presentation, we had an anxiety session, post-high school concerns, addiction and the teenage brain. So we're working on trying to get as much information out there and as many resources out there as possible for not just our students, but for the families as well. So in terms of looking at goals for our school counseling department this year, we're looking to further expand college access through increased college visits and instant decision days. And one of the things that Mrs. Patterson has been really trying to increase are having our students host those visits. The students really enjoy it, the college reps really enjoy it, and it gets the students more involved. Number 2 on here is a big part of the strategic plan that we haven't made as much progress as we would like, and Mrs. Patterson has really already started working on this in terms of expanding our two-way communication with our alum. And I've already talked to Mr. Sabino, our incoming Director of Guidance, in December about how we can improve this. And he has a number of ideas, especially as he has experience in another district. And then the third one, really looking at all of our procedures and information sharing for our student support services. Everything from our intervention and referral team to our Healthy Edge website to our core team, and really looking at how we can not only refine the processes to make them more user-friendly, for whether it's for a teacher referring a student, whether the information is just more targeted, to also really looking at all of those teams and processes and making sure that it's meeting student needs. So these are some of the areas for this year. And again, Mrs. Patterson already has talked to Mrs. Hayes and Mr. Sabino about these. I have met with them as well. So we will be continuing to make progress in this area. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, the timing of the strategic plan will actually work well to start in the winter, because by then the goal would be to have, not only will we have our new director of guidance in place, our new director of information technology in place, but also our new principal. The timeline for that is to hopefully get somebody in place by January. So then they can all be involved. They're obviously keys to the implementation of the plan, so having them involved is essential. So that is all we have for this evening. I know that was quite a lot, so I appreciate your patience and hearing from all of the members of our team. And I really appreciate the members of our team that were not directly involved in presenting tonight, but that were here to support their colleagues, and they have all played a tremendous role in all of this. I have to say that regardless of what your prescribed role is or what your job description is as a vice principal, as a supervisor of English, everyone has been involved in all of these in some way and has taken ownership, as have all of the teachers. So I'm really excited for what our next plan will bring and for what we'll be presenting you in May and June on the progress towards these goals. But I'll open it up if you have any comments or questions for me or any folks who shared anything.
Barry?
I was at Warrenville Hardware, and I ran into a couple of special needs kids with their teacher, and I have to say I was very impressed. She did an excellent job.
Oh, they were
with them.
working there. They was their.
Well, they were learning. They weren't actually hired yet.
But
they had to run in the store. She took them to everything. She was teaching them about it, all of it. And I was really impressed. So, good job.
One of you has to decide which of you is going first.
You're making me go first. So I have a recollection when I was on the board of K-8 about concerns regarding differences in abilities between one class year and another, and wanting to be able to compare as kids went through the system to that specific year. So when I look at a couple of the slides that were presented, specifically the AP results 3 and above, or the 3+, 4+ 5-year summary, when you look at a multi-year trend, it seems that things are flat, which would imply to me that every class is fairly similar. So then I have a hard time understanding, would appreciate some insight in the National Merit Scholar slide, where 2018 just seemed like an aberration, where we had almost twice as many in every category compared to historically and subsequent to that. So my first question, what was different about 2018, if you know?
So Greg, and you said National Merit Scholars, correct?
Correct. That was page 3 of our.
And that's something that we've actually, and I don't know if you have any additional insight to share, Mrs. Fallon, that you want to share with the board, because the National Merit, the way that the National Merit Selection works, it's like this mystery formula that we try to gain insight into, because we had seen, obviously, this year we have less. This year and last year, we have less than we had during, 2018 was a tremendous year. And what we're actually trying to do is gain insight into why we're having less students, because our scores are just as good, but the students aren't being selected at the same rate. And there's a lot of different factors that go into that process. So I don't know if you have anything that you want to share, Mrs. Fallon, because that was one of the tasks that we were actually looking into at the beginning of this year, is trying to find out what it is that they're performing just as well, but they're not getting selected as scholars.
And we did call the SAT, we did call College Board, and it's like the law. And the thing that we discussed internally with our administrative team is the fact that the students are not submitting resumes at this point in order to be commended or in order to be a semi-finalist. So
Over the last few years, there's been a lot of equity in the College Board. They wanted to push more equity, and I do know that other schools do call the College Board and complain, hey, why don't we have as many, National Merit Commended finalists? And I think the College Board, and this is just from talking to people that I know, are spreading this out to other schools. That was a monopoly in some schools in New Jersey for finalists, and some schools got a lot less finalists. And I think, that from people I talk to, that, when you call the College Board and you make some complaints, some things do change sometimes. So that could be it, that they're spreading this around to other schools. Now, that's just from talking to people, and, I don't know anything other than that, so.
Yeah, we are definitely perplexed by it because they're performing, if anything, better on the whole. So we can't quite figure out why it is that they're not, because as Mrs. Phelan said, at the recognized stage, it's just based on their score, correct? It's for the other stages that they start submitting additional materials. So that's a very fair point, and we are going to continue to try and find that out. So if we make any headway, I will certainly follow up.
Sounds like political correctness.
The list is long.
I
Forewarned.
wanted you to go first.
I know. Some of these will be just comments. So from me, personally, and I suspect other board members the same, when I look at data, it's a little bit difficult to interpret if I don't have a context. So statistically, standard deviation is a context. So I look at, for example, math scores where we're looking at 743 versus 741. I don't know what that means. If I don't have a standard deviation to allow me to compare things, it makes it very difficult to understand the data that I'm looking at. So a suggestion in the future is that. Second suggestion, mixing yellow and brown, although obviously our colors. The SAT trend was yellow, the math was brown, the ELA was brown, the AP was yellow, and so unless you're paying attention to the details, it becomes very difficult to follow. I think as a board, we're accustomed to seeing our schools perform better, so we generally look at whatever is the larger number is probably our school, but I would suggest that that be uniform throughout this. A lot of the comparisons are state versus like district, and while that data might be easier to get, I don't think people move here to compare themselves to the state. I think people move here because they want to be competitive with like districts, and having that comparison either in addition or in place of state comparisons, I think would be helpful. When I was in the K through 8, my recollection, and maybe I'm getting fuzzy and Peter may be able to correct me, but I thought in general math was a substantial strong suit in the K through 8. And I'm seeing that, and this is over a period of a number of years, that seems to disappear in the high school, and I'm not sure why. In Algebra 1, obviously this 2019 data sticks out. And again, whether a 740 versus 744 is a big difference or not, I have no idea. But it raises a question in my mind as to, is there a problem that is evolving that we are unaware of that we need to get our hands on? So I would suggest some inspection of that. In terms of ELA, I didn't understand the ELA 11 versus 9 and 10, where there was just almost a 50% drop in met or exceeded expectations. And that was also true of the state. So is there something different that is being tested than is being taught? When I look at the special ed, it's reasonably flat across the different grade levels. So again, raises a question of what's going on in that area.
Bob, I know why you wanted him to go first.
Why?
I'll share when you're done, Greg, but you're pointing out a lot of the things we talked about at Ed Committee, so I'll be happy, but finish first and then.
Sure. And from a board perspective, while I like the second half of the presentation, which is what we've done, what we plan to do, I think a focus on we're worried about this, or we recognize this issue, and this is how we're investigating it, this is what our plan is, or we don't know yet, would be of immense value, as opposed to somebody, me or somebody else, pointing out why is this the case. I mean, we commend all of you for doing a great job, but to do the exceptional job, to go from good to great, it's not maintaining, it's finding those margins where we can do a whole lot better. And so for me, hopefully for everyone else here, getting information about how do we take that next step to go from good to great, as opposed to we're doing well and we continue to do well. I'd rather us do well and go to great. And I'll pause for the time being.
So I'll add a few comments, and then Bob, you can
Can I have a
add
quick,
it.
I just have a quick question. For the NJSLA, math or ELA, are either of those tests required, or is a certain score required for graduation?
So I'll answer that somewhat in my explanation.
Let's
Dr.
just say
Shabilsky,
yes or no.
there's honestly not a yes or no answer to that question, in all seriousness.
Say that again?
He asked if there's a
I'm
required
asking
score
if
for
the
graduation.
NJSLA, for the math and the ELA,
Yes.
is there a requirement for the graduation? In a sense, are the kids going in, are the students going in and taking this test and feeling the pressure that they have to do well on this test?
No, because they have a whole menu of
Or are they
alternatives.
going in and taking the test and just thinking this test doesn't matter at all?
So
Because, I mean, you look at us in the SAT compared to the state, and you look at the NJSLA, us compared to the state. I mean, there's a stark contrast.
So
So
what
that's
Dr.
what I'm trying to
Shabilsky
get.
pointed out are basically all of the pitfalls and issues with the NJSLA. And so one thing I will say is that, number one of the issues is the state requirement of when we have to do the student performance data presentation. They made it much earlier than it used to be, so all of the comparative data that you would like to see is not available yet. And so that's something that Ed Committee had actually asked for us to follow up on when that is available. A lot of the student performance data, the state testing data, is really us meeting the requirement to share it publicly, because at this point, the real comparative data with our comp districts isn't available. The other issue with that data is that we happen to actually have a very high participation rate, and other schools do not. There's some schools that only test students that they believe will pass, and the rest do the portfolio process for graduation, so they're not even included in those results, which makes it very difficult for us, and this is what we talked about at Ed Committee, to use those results. And generally, when we compare to comp districts, it can be very helpful to us, because also we can say, okay, what is it that they're doing differently? And when we called one of them, because we couldn't believe how well they were doing, we found out they only test a very small population of their kids. That's what they're doing differently. However, that being said, math is an area that we have identified as an area that we do struggle specifically with our incoming freshmen, because they do come into, I think they can take one of 7 different courses, is it, Dan? And what I have found in speaking with other regional high schools, they face a very similar struggle, because they don't have the benefit of a K-12 district where they know, the students are coming through the same math program. So that is an area of focus for us, working with the K-8s on aligning the math programs, specifically for the most struggling learners who are coming in as freshmen. So, and that's where we allocate our Title I funds for additional help there. So that is certainly something that, while this data isn't so helpful in helping us, address and identify that specifically, that's something that, luckily at the high school level, we have multiple indicators, as you can see, that we can use. So that way we're able to look at a cross-section of them, as well as individual student data. And a lot of the data behind this that we didn't bring out tonight, but that we can share with you, that Dan showed a sample of to Ed Committee, is looking at, student grade versus NJSLA score. And again, not that there's always going to be a perfect correlation, but when you see a student is performing, very well in class and doing terribly on the NJSLA, or vice versa, it warrants a conversation to see, okay, what's the reason? Is it just because you went into the test that day and either were having a bad day, didn't really care? So we have a lot of those struggles. ELA 11, For that particular test, any student who was in an AP English course did not have to take it. And I think last year, Mike, for only 42 students took it because last year 11th graders didn't have, they told us to unregister all of them unless they hadn't passed a testing requirement. So it was just the very small group of students. So that's why looking at this too, you said out of context, it's very hard to glean from it meaning.
Talk about the Algebra 1.
So Algebra 1 for us is also difficult when comparing that to the state, because our Algebra 1 students in a regional high school are our most struggling math students as freshmen. If you're a K-12 district, the students taking Algebra 1, they might be in 7th grade, 8th grade, or 9th grade. For a K-8 district, it's their highest achieving students. So trying to compare those, it's not a helpful comparison. So that's why we have been looking at all sorts of different data and have, a lot of, Dan said he learned Python over the summer. That's what he's used to help, and we've used it Jim's used it for the English scores as well, to really take a look at some of the data on a deeper level. But this is our frustration with the NJSLA, because it really makes it very difficult for us to use it as an instructional growth tool. So again, luckily at the high school, we have a number of indicators, and these are just the standardized ones. We also have our obviously our in-house assessments, which has been a focus for the department. So I think those have certainly become more meaningful and more targeted in terms of being able to give more formative feedback. I'll turn it over to I know, Bob, you had some, I think, comments on this that you wanted to share that relate to what Dr. Shabilsky had said.
Sure. We've talked a lot about this in Ed Committee, obviously, and we went through a more detailed presentation of some of the data, as Dr. Jewett pointed out, regarding, comparative analysis, looking at how the students performed on the test versus how they're performing in classes, identifying where some outliers are and how there be targeted interventions to address those kind of things. But I think there's a bigger problem, and the bigger problem is I can't overstate how disappointed I am in the way that the state has handled the various changes regarding the high school assessment, formerly known as PARCC. My disappointment comes as a result of the schizophrenic changes that have been made by the Department of Education, including the never-ending guessing game of what will be used as graduation requirements for our students. Who should be taking the tests? How much time is allotted? What grade levels will be impacted? And what content will actually be assessed? It's unconscionable that we, our students, and our parents are forced to play this annual game of guess the graduation requirement. It's completely ridiculous. The assessment would be a joke if the stakes weren't so high for our students. There's nothing funny about this. It's bad enough that this badly flawed assessment is being used as part of our teacher evaluation system in language arts, literacy, and math. What makes this even crazier is that the percentage of the total teacher evaluation these assessments make has rendered an already questionable strategy meaningless from an evaluation standpoint. Why even bother with all the staff time and paperwork required for the scores for these evaluations to be used if it has no statistically meaningful impact on the evaluation? None. The test scores are 5% of our ELA and math teachers' assessment. 5%. They could fail that and still come out as highly effective. It makes no sense whatsoever. If there's an option as a board that we may consider decoupling the student test scores from the teacher evaluations, I would be enthusiastically in favor of that. I would like to ask Dr. Jewett to let us know what, if any, options are possible so that we as a board can explore this in that regard. The amount of money, time, energy that we're putting into just that aspect of it for no benefit whatsoever is ridiculous. Furthermore, the fact that the state has been intentionally ambiguous about who should be taking the test formerly known as PARCC has also made things worse. It's given some schools in our area the opportunity to manipulate the test results based on who's actually taking the tests and who's discouraged from taking the tests. artificially enhancing the study of school-based results on assessment results. And this adds further evidence of an assessment system that is at best broken and at worst a complete and total failure. And while it's one thing for this to occur in more affluent communities, the fact that this may occur in communities for students who may need the help the most flies in the very face of the original premise of making sure that schools are addressing the educational needs of all students and not allowing schools to hide certain students in the data. This is an educational travesty. As a member of this Board of Education, I would hope, with the concurrence of my colleagues, that I would suggest that we as a district do not spend one more dime on any further training, materials, or support for the current state assessment scheme. Furthermore, we should not allocate any more time to meet the state requirement than absolutely necessary, and that we encourage all of our students to use the alternative pathways available to them to meet whatever the graduation's requirement are, at least as of today. And lastly, I'd like to ask the administration to reject any request from the Department of Education to be involved in any additional activities outside of those minimum requirements in state code. We should no longer allow our students to be guinea pigs for this broken system perpetuated by a Department of Education that clearly has no idea what they're doing with student assessments. It's a complete travesty for our state. This testing regime has become a political football that has nothing to do with what's in the best interest of serving the educational needs of our kids. On October 21st, at an emergency meeting of the State Board of Education, the Department of Education is going to propose that we return to the lowest of low bars, a variation of the high school proficiency assessment, or the old HESPA test. After spending hundreds of millions of dollars across the state and millions of dollars in our own district, this is shameful. Why would we ever roll back an assessment that we now have so that what we expect of our 9th graders or our 8th graders in Algebra 1 is going to be what we expect of our 11th graders moving forward? This is educational travesty. It is educational malpractice. And I, for one, can no longer sit silent and not say anything about it. I can't tell you how angry I am at the way the state is handling this and the type of nonsense that they're imposing on this district. It is infuriating to me.
So how do you feel about this?
Tell us how you really feel about it.
One thing I will say, one advantage we have as being a high school is that the test scores actually are not part of high school teachers' evaluations. It's only for, our teachers have student growth objectives, but not the SGPs, which is the student growth percentile. So that's one bit of relief you can hear. But one of the things Bob referred to in his statement was that after our ed committee meeting, I'm pretty sure the room is bugged because 5 minutes later, I got a letter saying that we were selected for a field test for the New Jersey SLA for this year for ELA. I'm not kidding. The timing was really impeccable for ELA and math, which means we had done such a great job with getting the schedule last year so that each test, other than algebra, believe Algebra 1 was the one we split over 2 days because we wanted the students to have more time, correct? But for the rest of them, we were able to fit them into one either AM or PM session, and now because we have to do an additional unit for the field test, that means we now have to have 2 days of testing again. And I am going to talk to the DOE about it, but I know their answer will be if we don't do it, then they'll withhold money. So, or they'll say,
That's a tip.
I know. So,
The 40% on the,
yeah, exactly, there goes the media center,
Whatever
right?
state money
Yeah.
we get.
I mean, I think part of the issue is that we're using, it's one thing to say, okay, we have to take the test, right? And whether or not it's a requirement, or you can use it as a requirement to graduate. It's another thing to sit here and, I think the problem being, this is our own progress update, right? So if this data does nothing for us, it means nothing. I think presenting it to us, other than the fact that you have to present it.
And we have to, and they tell us we have to present
Doesn't
subgroups,
help,
we have to present a
right?
comparison.
It doesn't help us figure out, are we progressing or not, if we can't rely upon it, right? So the question that I always come up to is, what other types of assessment within ourselves can we develop or use, which we already have, to demonstrate the progress? when you're reporting to us about the progress. Because, you know, you look at it's not like when I was on the K through 8 board, and it was clear, it was aligned with what you were doing, and you could pull out the little tiny bit of data and say, they're not doing really well in this little area, let's focus on that. There's nothing like that for us here, because there's way so much math that we're teaching. Basically, the only thing of substance that I ever got was from the English supervisor, who said, it just demonstrates to me whether or not I'm aligned with the core curriculum content standards or not. But it doesn't give the minutia of the detail to say, what is the problem and where can we fix it? I agree with Bob to a great extent, because it's meaningless information at this point, to me.
And it changes every
Yes.
year.
So you can't
So you
compare.
can't compare
from
year
year.
to year. There's no, you
Right.
know, it's like it's an ever-moving baseline. Every year is a baseline year. And I think that to our administrators and the faculty credit, they've tried to make, you know, the best of a bad situation. And I'm really heartened to hear about the way that they're really taking seriously the look at data and how to use various data sets to inform practice. I think that's phenomenal. And particularly when we're looking at, you know, the SAT and the ACT information, which is certainly much more stable than what we're seeing from the state assessments. I think there's stuff that we can gain from that. But I completely support, you know, your point of what are the other things that, you know, our administrators can come up with, is go, these are the things that we can really use that will be meaningful for our students, and not this, you know, intellectual exercise that they keep trotting out every spring.
Thank you. Right.
Well, thank you, everybody. We have more questions?
Two more things. One,
9 o'clock.
well aware.
Okay. We're in Florida today.
Something that would be helpful for me would be, as I think I implied earlier, following kids over time. So picking out whatever it might be, 7th grade assessment, and seeing how that cohort did over time in comparison. Because if the game is changing along the way, it should change similarly for everybody. What I would want to see is that we're maintaining whatever advantage we have, or identifying a disadvantage and we're minimizing it over time, without that K through 8 comparison, kind of hard to do. And then last is a question on the college attendance. It seemed that the unknown was ranked at 6%, order of magnitude different than historically over a number of years. Why didn't we have that information? Are all of those the 2-year college bounds, and that's why that's different?
Yeah, no,
or
and
why
I'm
don't we
glad you
know?
brought that up, because that is definitely a significant difference from past years, and it was actually higher. But our interim director, when she saw the number, went to the guidance counselors and said, this is not acceptable, we need to find out where these kids are. But what she talked about, you know, as you saw, it was one of the goals, is really tying it, creating more incentives for students to give us that information before they leave, because all we have to do is get that initial information in Alumni Tracker in Naviance, and then the college clearinghouse will be able to reach out to them. But they can only reach out to them if we have that information. So we do give them credits, guidance credits. So we're looking at tying that to part of that, so that before they leave us, they have to give us that information, as well as personal contact information that we do not use. They sign off that the clearinghouse has permission to reach them through that, so that they can collect postgraduate data. So you're absolutely right, that's a glaring difference from past years, and we need to do a better job of that.
Is there something that precludes us from requiring what they're doing after they leave?
The issue is, how do we require it? It's just how, because also we need to get that contact information, so that because one of the pieces of information I want to know, we get that college clearinghouse data of how many of the 2-year retention rate, how many of them are at wherever they went to after they left here, how many of them are there 2 years later. Right now, though, when we get that data, it's about 60% of our graduates that we get that for. The rest aren't signed up with the clearinghouse, so we don't have that. But of that 60%, we find out how many aren't there. We don't know why. Is it because, and was it because of distance, geography? Was it because of the fit of the school? Was it financial? Was it because they transferred from a 2-year to a 4-year? So that's the information that would be so helpful for us to know when we're counseling them to choose, whatever their path may be after high school. And so this will help us get that if the clearinghouse has their contact information. We just have not, we need to do that more effectively. And we need to look at different ways too of reaching out to them. But I do believe that we can create more incentives for them to have to tell us their plans before they leave, however that is. So yes, we absolutely need to do a better job of that.
Take your car keys.
Just a couple quick questions. I know that the state's going through the standards revision process for everything but language arts, literacy, math, and science. Do we have a game plan for our own revisions once they unleash, standards revisions in 6 content areas?
Once they give us because I was about to say I would assume, which is a very dangerous thing to say, but they have not, usually that comes with an implementation timeline and they'll stagger it so that you're not doing everything at once. So I'm waiting to get information on that for them to let us know by September of 2020. These are the ones that need to be implemented by September of 2021. So once we have that, then we will get that all set and on track.
Okay. The other question that I had was regarding SEL. And kind of as part of the standards revision, SEL is going to be apparently embedded within the standards as well. And I know that we've been working on it, independently, but I'm just wondering if there's been any thought on how we're actually moving toward making sure that our teachers are prepared to incorporate SEL into the classroom and into their instruction in an intentional way, as part of their work.
Yes.
I'll take this one because we've been doing a lot of work with professional learning on that. Through the strategic plan, through the wellness committee for the past couple of years now, we have tried a couple of different models. We had an intentional district-wide, these are the days that we will be doing an SEL type of activity in the classroom. The wellness committee came up with some dates. The teachers had specific dates, and we set aside those time and days to actually do those activities. Took the feedback, evaluated that approach, and then tried a more natural approach where the teachers themselves are selecting the times and days that SEL activities fit in more nicely with what they're doing curricularly. And that's been received much better in the classroom. So to support the teachers' efforts, that's also why you've seen in our agendas for our PD days, there has been such a push on educating the teachers for their own expertise in SEL areas, so not just for the benefit of the wellness of the employee, which is certainly one goal, but also so the teachers are equipped so that they can then turnkey that in the classroom to the students.
Okay, thank you. And then 2 other ones. Ms. Falvo, I was heartened to hear about civics. I'm curious as to why there's this idea that we have to have a state mandate to teach something that's already in this social studies standards?
It is in the social studies standards. There's a lot of organizations that have developed, especially in New Jersey, that really want to isolate it because they see the need for, like I mentioned, the lack of knowledge in all kinds of areas with government and politics. So these different organizations, including the Social Studies Supervisors Association that I'm a member of, they've been pushing the legislature to pass this law that says that we would require students to take a civics course as well. So even though it's in part of the requirements, just like economics and social and political and so on, I think it's just because of the
Because no
influence.
one's doing it?
No, I don't think that. I think we implement it into our in US 1 at the high school, we have a whole unit on the Constitution, In US2, the same thing. When we look at our world history courses, we talk about different governments and situations in other countries and the interactions. But I think there's not, like, so we have a government and politics AP course. We've had that for years and years. There's a certain student that takes that course, and we have requirements to get into that course. In our core courses, we don't have the means, the time to go into all the specifics that I think students need and that I think these organizations feel need to really delve deeper into understanding the political system. So when we do the Constitution in US1, which is the one course that really, of the 3 core courses, that really gets into a government, it's still a basic. We talk about the amendments and the Bill of Rights, but it doesn't really delve into, again, the politics aspect of it. We talk about the 3 branches of government, but we can only go so far before we move on to the next unit because of the standards and the expectations there. So I think, and you know, if you look at newspapers or whatever, they say our kids don't know, you know, about government. So I think that's where the push is, and I just think there's a real strong lobbying group in New Jersey, a bunch of them, that are pushing for this, and they are sure it's going to pass in the middle schools. But again, not in the high school because we have so many required courses as well.
Thank you. And then my last question is for Mr. Patelli. The idea of...
You want to know the 4th instrument, don't you? I'm dying to know what the 4th instrument is.
Actually, no, I won't, but since you brought it up.
It's the vibraphone.
Oh.
It is the vibraphone, there you go. Should have known, another percussion instrument. So the question I have, the idea behind expanding the program and adding technology and guitar and keyboard was to make sure that we were attracting those students that kind of had, up to this point in time, really did not have a pathway into participating in those programs.
Sure.
So then the theory would be that we're seeing more students that are now participating as a result than what we had when we were just maintaining the traditional programs. Is that true? And do you have any sense of to what degree we've seen an impact on music enrollment as a result of these new courses?
Well, as I mentioned, we have 2 more sections in music tech, and we have Mr. Wyatt has a complete full schedule. We alternate every other year in AP Music Theory. So we were able to fill an extra section of advanced choir and give Mr. Wyatt the extra section. So, I mean, without growing so fast, I would just like to see the growth over another year or so before we kind of see what else we need to do. Also,
Are you asking if the new music tech courses are kind of acting as an entryway into the band and choir programs?
Not necessarily. I want to know that it's additive. The idea is that
to
we're
our
reaching...
overall set of music, like where between all of our courses, we had this many students, now we have an addition.
I would say when I go into that music lab, I see more of our general ed students than I do when I walk into the choir room and band room.
We can actually easily get that data from Genesis.
I can definitely get that data.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. Thank you.
I would also like to make one plug for the marching band. We're playing Saturday night in Ridge, and if you come...
That's this weekend?
That's this weekend, 7:15 in Ridge, and if you've seen them at the football game, it's different than you see them in the marching band competition. Also, the weekend after that, Saturday in East Brunswick, and then the States are in Rowan University on Sunday. So, go Marching Warriors, and thank you for your support.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Falvo, Bob Morrison highlighted probably the worst part of our State Department of Education. In my 6 years on a K-8 board and then 12 years on this board, I think a close second to that is the fact that it's the reason I'm against mandating anything else, not just at the high school, anywhere. In my 18 years, I've never seen anything come out of the state standards. I've only seen retired educators put more stuff in, and they just keep loading up our students and our teachers. I think it's unfair, and I think it's a travesty also. So I can't support mandating that, but I didn't...
It's a catch, because it's very important. I mean, like I said, we poll these students just kind of offhandedly and say, do you know this? And they they don't. And this is across the board in New Jersey, across the nation. So I'm a big supporter of having something that will allow the students to learn this. I understand not mandating it. I like it only because I think if it's in the middle schools, like I said, it'll increase interest for the high school in our elective courses. But yeah, I mean, I do understand what you're saying about limiting, because then if they are interested in another subject like the arts or whatever, and they're required to take a civics course, it may not be for everybody, but for me,
I guess the thing Peter, I kind of see with your, we talked about this with public speaking too, where it's important enough that every student should have it, so rather than creating an elective for it, not that, and I'm not opposed to, I think it's great for students who really want to look at it in more detail, but it's something we need to make sure that we're integrating into courses so that all students are getting it, because it is something that every student should have.
I want to thank each and every one of you, not only for being here and the important information you've given us, but I think sitting here and watching the discussion that the board had afterwards, and I think demonstrates more than my thanks can, how important this is to us as a board, and how this is integral to what we try and do in setting policies and goals for this district. So even though it kept you all here quite late, I'm very glad you were able to see the robust board discussions that you provoked. And thank you all, and have good evenings.
Thanks so much. Thank you, guys.
We are now at the first opportunity for public comment.
So soon?
I mean, it's a good point.
I see someone racing to the podium.
Got to beat Brenda. Ken Carnos, Watchung Hills Regional Education Association President. I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the WHREA for expediting the process and approving the salary guides. We look forward to finalizing this and quickly on our end and ratifying as soon as possible. Primarily, we look forward to moving beyond the distractions and discomforts that we know come from working without a contract and begin focusing on what really is important at Watchung Hills Regional High School. We thank you for all that you did to make that happen, and we look forward to finalizing those details. Thank you.
We look forward to finalizing it too, but we do have a contract. Anyone else? I will now close the first opportunity for public comments. Action items.
Tim, I'm trying to figure out what we need to do with that one addition.
We have so we were discussing before, the band has a Sunday competition. You know, with the that's what I mean. I kind of feel funny having to approve this as a field trip, because like if the wrestling team goes.
Is this something on the agenda?
No,
There
okay, now,
isn't.
No, but he was.
now I finally
There
understand. Now I'm getting what the email is about.
Yeah,
I
so,
got it.
so we're trying to figure
Yes.
out, this is kind of on the fly, because we're learning about, the band has an opportunity, since they've done so well,
Okay.
to go to this, I
The
guess.
state championship.
State championship. I don't know if that's a field trip, but I'm trying, off the top of my
Well,
head, I don't understand.
here's the other thing that we do with this, though. This is, we approve at the beginning of the year on those blanket field trips, we approve marching band, correct, to go on
Correct.
trips?
Yes.
So this is already covered, so if the board's comfortable with it, we can retroactively approve it at the next
Right.
meeting, because we wouldn't be out of compliance with the,
Yeah.
sometimes I have to call the county to get special permission, but since we've already done that blanket approval, however, as a board, we've always made a practice that we like to approve the specific trips, so we can just do that at the next meeting if everyone's comfortable with that, because
If
we
they're in
wouldn't
a
be out of.
state competition,
So-
we gotta go.
Yeah, but rather than trying to figure out tonight what the details are, since we already did that blanket approval, we're in compliance, so we can do that.
Great. In that case, Mr. President, I'd like to move items A1 through A7.
Second.
Thank you, Bob and Greg. Any discussion of resolutions A1 through A7? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Stiles?
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mrs. Ober?
Yes.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, Ms. Potter,
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky,
Yes.
Mr. Raban,
I'll be abstaining tonight.
and Mr. Fallon.
Yes. Now,
Okay, motion's carried.
Janine, did somebody explain to you what the asterisk on the agenda is? Okay.
Mr. President, I'd like to move item A8.
Thank you, Bob.
Second.
Thank you, Greg. Discussion on resolution A8. Can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Stiles?
Ms. Barone,
Yes.
Mr. Fahey,
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Ober,
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Raban,
Abstain.
and Mr. Fallon.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items C1 through C17.
Thank you, Bob.
Second.
Thank you, Rita. Any discussion on resolutions C1 through C17? Can we have a vote, Mr. Stiles?
Ms. Barone,
Yes.
Fahey,
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Ober,
Yes.
Ms. Potter,
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky,
Yes.
Mr. Raban,
Abstain.
and Ms. Fallon.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items D1 through D17, as well as D20 and 21.
Second.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Greg. Any discussion of resolutions D1 through D17, D20, and D21? Greg?
Just a comment and more of a context for future things like D10, D11, D12. Basically, these are rental charges, either that we are charging or costs that we are incurring. I guess it would be helpful for me to know, is that the same as it was last year? Is it more? What's the rate of increase? You know, when was the last time we increased a rental charge, if it's been 10 years ago or last year? Not that it needs to be in a resolution, but in the background materials that we get, having a sense of.
I think I had it in there.
Did you? Because I looked and I didn't see it.
In the blues?
But yeah, I looked in the blues and it was just general, but maybe I didn't look in the right spot.
You know what? It might have been in last time's blues because
I
they
think-
were
I think it was
preview
in-
items, and so we don't always repeat, so it's
Gotcha.
probably in the last one.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, if I missed it, I apologize, but I like context.
I mean, real quick,
No.
the rental, Atlanta volleyball rental coming in, I always charge them 2% more. I generally try to stick
Okay.
to that. 11's actually lower, that's the hockey. Less
Yeah.
ice time from them. 12 went up a little bit, but it dropped from the last meeting because they had added an extra week, and I was trying to figure out why it went up so much, but it's up $500 from last year, which isn't bad, considering the price.
Thank you.
Okay, can we have I'm sorry. Barry.
D16, is there any way to separate those? Because if it was, I would vote down 3 of them.
You could just, Barry, you can, in the past, on the bill list, we voted on specific items,
So I can just say no on D16, everything will be fine.
if you wish, but, I mean, just so you know, if I don't have those things, like, if you want to make a big change right now, it's not going to work. I understand what you're saying, but you're midway through the game and you want to make that kind of a change, it's not a good idea. If I have my,
Well, my saying no isn't gonna make it fail. So,
no, but,
You know,
I understand what you're saying.
I would like to voice my opposition to such silly.
I think you've.
So could you, Mr. Hunsinger, for the benefit of the rest of us, could you help us understand what your concerns are?
Well, we keep getting socked with this VMware and these USX Cisco box support for $51,000 a year, plus another $6,700 for support services. And it's something that we should have gotten rid of a long time ago. But apparently our new IT person is looking to get rid of all that as well. I just hate paying that money. It's like a money grab to me.
I can tell you though, Barry, so our new IT director will certainly look at all of this. I can tell you that the virtual desktop is very useful because as much as I don't necessarily use it when I'm here, it allows a lot to get done when we're not here, because I can get into anything I need to, that I don't necessarily have on my laptop, but like our personnel system, our, so.
Oh, yeah, no,
so-
virtual services are good, but this VMware support and licenses is just ridiculous.
But we'll have, well, that,
All right,
it
I
certainly
mean,
is
I'll
expensive.
approve it.
No,
I
but
mean, not
but
that-
that'll be something that he absolutely is going to be evaluating all of that, so that will make sure that he takes a look at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a roll call vote, Mr. Stein.
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Ms. Ober?
Yes.
Ms. Potter?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Abstain.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items D18 and D19.
Thank you, Bob.
Second.
Thank you, Rita. Any discussion of resolutions D18 and D19? Can we have a vote, Mr. Stein?
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mrs. Ober?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Abstain.
And Ms. Fallon?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you. Second opportunity for public comment? Nope, I will close the second opportunity for public comment. Other business, I mentioned before the school board's meeting in November that Dr. Bert Mandelbaum is going to be presenting at. I hope all of you know, you don't pay anything to go to these dinner meetings. This one's going to be down a little bit further away, closer to Mercer, but it's an excellent presentation. If you can go, I highly recommend it to you.
What is it?
They're one of the monthly or semi-monthly local school boards association. The Somerset County Local School Boards Association is meeting with the Mercer County ones. I think it's November 21st, Bob,
Yeah, at the Cherry Valley Country Club in Montgomery.
in Montgomery.
Ooh, that's a good place.
Yes, food is better than at Maggiano's.
Very good food.
The 17th meeting. But at that meeting, at the county meetings, there's always some sort of educational presentation. You get board member credits if you're interested in those, but it's a good way to get valuable information, network with other board members as well. And it's a topic that we are going to be discussing more in the coming years, I believe. So that's why I'm recommending it.
What's the topic?
It's on the
Changing of the school
physiological
day. Oh, I'm sorry.
needs
Okay,
and,
no.
of students and circadian rhythms, and it's not just the kids are being lazy and they can't get up, or they're not going to
No.
bed early enough.
Scientific
No, because there's
fact.
another presentation on the 21st about vaping.
Yes, that's up here somewhere.
Yeah, it's at, it's in Somerville.
So on the vaping, real quick, a number of us were there. I took the package, I gave it to Beth. I
The
think
county
it
soup
needs to
actually
come-
forwarded everything
Okay.
to us as well.
I think it needs to be on the agenda to talk about the policy. I think we really
Yes.
need to take a look at that.
That's actually.
And they have four
I-
policies and whatever in there.
I actually have a meeting tomorrow with
Okay.
some members of the administrative team to take a look at that. And I was just saying that that's going to be on the next committee agenda, so that's great. And I'm glad that you all went and heard, you heard some of the same presenters and some different ones as what we've heard. So that's great. That's really, really helpful.
Well, one of the presenters was a woman from Empower, let's see.
I shared all of her materials with our student assistants.
Yeah, and they have a youth advisory board, which I think would be a great opportunity
Yep.
for one of our students.
I passed
There's
that along
nobody
to them.
currently from Watchung on the board.
Yep.
Good idea.
Also, I want to mention that I did talk to Gwen Thornton today, and she has forwarded to me the information to put together the superintendent's evaluation, so we will schedule a meeting on that as well. And she promised to get me in the next day or two a couple of dates when she can come meet with us for the professional development that we talked about. Greg?
Just a question to refer to our IT folks, since that topic came up. We had theoretically a 4-day break I know people went away. I can tell you that I'm aware of kids who had homework who, from a hotel, could not access stuff because of some firewall that exists in the system. I can tell you that in the healthcare environment, where I think we are the most regulated, I can still use a hotel Wi-Fi to be able to access information. It surprised me that kids can't access the high school.
Can you possibly follow up and just give me the example of something they were trying to access that they
Okay.
couldn't? So if it was Google Classroom, or if it was a website the teacher told them to go, just because that would be helpful. So
will
If it
do
was
that.
stored in Google Cloud, they should have been able to get it from anywhere.
But it depends what the assignment was. If they were having them, access something, it could, so.
I
that's
will,
all-
I will
yeah.
get you that information.
Yeah, that would be really helpful, because then
Thanks.
I can share that with them. That's a little frustrating.
Yeah.
I know that happens to me, actually, when I'm at stuff, and it gets very frustrating.
So the one item I wanted to bring up was the New Jersey School Boards Association just released today a new task force report on student mental health, which Mr. Fallon was a member of that. So Pete, thanks for serving on that, but also wanted to know if there was anything you wanted to share with the board regarding that report.
The report that this task force put together, and we've been working on it since almost a year on it. It's being released in Highland Park tonight, and there'll be another release meeting at the convention next week. What we focused on was trying to come up with basically not just resources, but a raft of strategies that have been used by a number of schools in the SEL area, specifically focusing on mental health, suicide prevention, that sort of thing. If you get to read the report, which is in the copy of School Leader that you should have just gotten in the mail recently, there are a number of examples of that come directly from what we've been doing here at Watchung Hills. And we were, as a result of our strategic plan, ahead a few years of very many schools in the state in focusing on SEL, social and emotional learning. And so I was able to share with the task force from the administration the action plans that we've had the last 2, 3, 4 years now in the SEL area. And that a number of those examples have gone into the reports, because the idea of this thing is there are some boards where there's only a couple people on the board who have any interest in this. And so other people on the board are frustrated that they can't get their boards interested in this. And if you can't get the board interested in it, it's not going to push the administration to do anything in this area. So, and on the other hand, you have boards like ours where this has been a push now for 5 years. And we gain the benefit of, we can see in this report, not just the strategies we've used here, but there are strategies that other schools have used and other resources they've gone to. And so it can be used here as well. But what we really focused on it in the report was being useful to all sorts of school districts, the ones well into this, the ones just getting started, the ones who haven't even looked at this. And so there's a whole lot of recommendations. There are no mandates in it, but it's informational in terms of these are things that can be done to help students through the greater stresses that they actually do have than when we were in school.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And with that,
We have to go back into exec, right?
yes, very briefly.
Motion to move
To
into exec.
executive session to discuss contract matter. Action will not be taken upon our return.
Okay.
Second?
You got it over.
All in favor?
Susan.